Alright guys, we're going to study 100 big blinds, start single raise button versus big blind. And we're going to play out of position. I think that here we can donk 30% of the time, so maybe we want to bet this maybe 60% of the time. And I'm pretty wrong. We are only leading 15% of the time, and with our particular hand only 30% of the time. So twice as much, 40% in fact. With two hearts we seem to like to check raise a bit more. Okay, what do we do here? I think that we want to check this almost always, even with King Jack. I think this is mostly checking. Yeah, that's leading 12% of the time. For deuce, what do we have to do here? I think if we are leading 15% of the time, I think we have, yeah, we are just leading 5% of the time. So the thing is that against late position raises, our hand is not very well defined, and the range of our opponent is also not well defined. So I think we're going to check almost always. And monotone boards, this is especially true since our opponent has many more ace high flashes than we do. Three, 5, 5. We have to check very, very often this. Even with a 5, we could only lead like 10% of the time or 15%. 16%. 9, 10 Jack. I think we have some king queens. And also does our opponent. With this particular combo we are checking. Nine, 6, 6. Well, we absolutely want to check this one. Then the 4, I think we have to check this. Maybe we want to lead with this hand like 10% of the time. 90% of the time, yeah. Deuce 6, we wanna check this. We are almost always checking. Probably check calling, I would imagine. I don't think you can raise this one. And yeah, it's 100% call. And the bet size is just 50%. Here as well, we have to check back very often. Even with the ace of spades. We're going to check back quite often, although we can lead like 1 in 4 times or something like that. question remains if we check raise here. I think we probably want to check raise 15-20% of the time. Just 13% of the time, and we're calling. Interesting that we're calling here. Probably trying to spot two pair or going for the bluff on the river, probably. Jack 8-6, this is very bad, so we have to check fold that one. Deuce 5-10. We have to check this very often. And here he's going to bet 75, and I would say that we are calling here. Deuce 3-4, no hearts. We have an ace, but I don't think this is going to be enough to bet. Do we call if he bets 50%? I don't think so without hearts. I think we're just better off folding here. Again, Deuce 6-8, although it's against late position, no, against early position, for sure we have to check. Here it's tempting to bet because we have the jack and the 9, which blocks a bit, but we are just checking almost always. Deuce 3-4 without hearts. I think we want to check raise this one. Oh, we are betting here. Without backdoors, apparently we call a bit more. Just pause here. But yeah, Deuce 3-4, we have, yeah, what is interesting to note is that Deuce 3-4, we are leading 30% of the time, and that's why we can lead with the 5-6. Here, we should probably lead 20% of the time, which makes me believe that maybe we can lead this one. Okay, so we are leading 15%. And with our particular combo, we are blocking the 9 jack and the 9-7, and we are blocking a little bit with the 6 of hearts. Without the 6 of hearts, I would say this is a check. Yeah, without a heart, it's a check. And with our particular hand, we are %60 of the time, so this is not always a lead either. Well, as always, this has to be a check very, very often. Here, this has to be a check as well. We are leading just 9% of the time, so leading once in a while with the spades. With three spades, we are leading a bit more just because we want our opponent to call with ace 3 all the way. Here, the 9 queen would be the nuts, but here we're going to check as well. We are betting this one. Why are we betting here? I think if we were against an early position raise, I guess we would check. But here, probably we think that our opponent may have a set of jacks or tens. If we had ace 9, 10 jack, yeah, now ace 9, ace 9, 10 jack, ace 9, ace 10 jack, 4. With the nuts, now we would check. And here we would check as well. So the point remains that we are leading because we want our opponent to call with 2 pair or sets. And we are betting a bit more often with the ace 9, because if we are up against the 9 queen or 9 7, we would be in a lot of trouble. And if they raised us on the flop, we don't know what to do. I mean, are we going to fold the nut flush on the flop? So I guess that's why you can bet a bit more happily here, holding the 9 of spades. Probably difficult to play a balanced range though. 3 4. I think we have to check this one. Bet. Kind of curious. We do not hold any backdoors. Because of that, it looks like we are betting more often. Well, our hand is certainly not good enough to check call. Interesting. This is a check for sure. Think just a check. We're betting here. Why are we betting? Well, I guess almost never, they raised us almost never. And also with a 4, but with a 4 we're checking. Yeah, I guess that we're betting a lot with the nut flush, but we have more hands with a 4 on our range. Is that right? Yeah, because the ace we're going to have. We have an ace, just a random ace. One in 13 times. Yeah, okay, we have a random ace 1 in 13 times, and then with another heart, maybe 4% of the time we hold a nut flush draw. But we are going to have a 4. Like 15% of the time or so. So 2 divided 52. Well, in fact, like 49. 1 in 20, so like 1 in 25, 4 times, so 4 divided 25, yeah, like 15% of the time we are going to have a 4. And since we are holding more 4s than the nut flush draw, I guess that if we don't want to be unbalanced, we can bet a bit more often with the nut flush draw. Does that make sense? I think it kind of does. Here we are going to check. The thing is, are we going to check raise? I would think so, especially with the nut flush draw with backdoor spades. And without backdoor spades, we are kind of raising right here. Three, 4, 6. I think that we can bet this one because we have a pair, we're blocking hearts, and we have more 5-7s than our opponent does. So if we are going to bet just 30% of the times here with this particular combo, maybe we can bet 60 or 70% of the time. Well, I was right that we are betting this 26% of the time, but I was wrong because we want to check call here. In fact, yeah, we want to check call apparently. In fact, we're betting when we are holding one heart. So I think that this theory that medium made hands and medium flush draws want to check back. So apparently they don't want to donk out either. Yeah, but interesting, and we only need to bet 50. Okay, 755. If we are betting this like 20% of the time or 25% of the time, then with our 5 maybe we can bet 50 to 60% of the time. So we are donking 20% of the time, and with our particular hand we can bet 60% of the time. So yeah, when you arrive to the checking portion, make it twice, and then you arrive to the donking percentage. For example, if you need to donk 22% of the time, 22 times 2 is 44, so you arrive at a roughly estimation of your donking percentage. See here, I think we have to check because we do not block the 5-6. Here we're leading 40%, which is pretty crazy. With some particular combos you donk 50%. It's kind of hard to know why you would lead ace king jack 3 and not ace king jack 3. So I don't know what the difference is between holding the jack of spades and or not, or the 3 of spades. Maybe this is due to the fact that the solver is not analyzing hands to the infinity. But yeah, it's what is interesting to point out in this hand is that we are leading 40% of our range, which is astonishing high. Here we're going to lead maybe 20% of our range. We have a medium mate hand and a medium draw, so we are going to check this one almost always. Here ace high board, we are going to check almost always. This combo is a bit tricky because we are blocking the aces and we are blocking the 4-5. But still, I think we're going to check. Yeah, because we're just checking so often. The thing is, are we going to check raise? I don't think so because we do not have the ace of hearts. The correct answer was raise. Here is just a call in my opinion. Okay, yeah, so the other hand we were going to check raise and then fold to further action, which is pretty makes sense because he's going to see bet 100% of the time. Here is a check almost always. Ace queen 9 is a check almost always because we do not hold aces or queens that often, and he's a bit more likely to have the king of spades. And I would say this has to be a check fold. Pretty tight, but we do not hold a spade. Okay, what happened here? 9-10. Well, this is an obvious check. We're not blocking, and we have to fold. I would say he's going to bet just half pot because you don't have king jack or you don't. And folding, right. We're folding with 1 heart and calling with 2 hearts. Queen 10-5. I think we have a small leading range of 20% here, but with those two pairs, check calling seems alright to me. So yeah, small leading range of 15%, not with this particular combo, and he's going to bet 75% of the pot, and I think we should just call. We are starting to raise sometimes here. Particularly, we want to raise when we are holding a 1 backdoor. Here you can raise, I don't know, 1 in 3 or something like that, but do not go bananas with 2 pair without a real redraw. Also, since you're holding a king, it's a bit less likely that your opponent has something like king jack. So you have to be aware. Here it's a spot where you have a... the correct answer is bad. What I was thinking is that you have a made hand and you have a medium hand and you have a medium draw. But in fact, you do not have a made hand and your draw is pretty bad because you're holding 3 hearts. If we had king 10, 10, 7, in fact, we would just check call. But with this particular combo, we want to bet 75% because it's an easy fold if we get raised, and we are blocking the continuation range of our opponent because we are holding 3 hearts. So this makes for a perfect donk. So as I said, the hands that you want to donk are either strong made hands, or strong draws, or hands which have a little bit of equity if when called, like gut shots and backdoors, and especially if they have cards which are blocking the continuation range of your opponent. So this is a perfect candidate. And then we can go king 10, 7, 8. Yeah, and with this 71% of the time. So yeah, you do not have to donk every single time. You could probably check fold, I guess. Well, this is an easy check. Call, probably. He should bet 50%. If your opponent starts to bet the full pot, just and just fold. And apparently here we just have to fold here right now. Even with 1 heart we're folding because it's a bit more likely than that our opponent doesn't have a flush draw and that he is holding an ace. And with 2 hearts we're just calling, which makes sense. So yeah, interesting folder. I would have called, I would think. Here, as always, we have to check because our leading range is very small, so we have to check. The question remains, what do we do against a bet? And I would say that against a bet, we need to raise maybe 25% of the time and raise 50% of the time when we are holding just the blocker. No, we are raising. Okay, so we are raising, but just 70% of the time with either the blocker well, yeah, of course you are going to call with the ace 10, and because you have to pair, and potentially you could try to bluff some turns if they bet into you or something like that. And yeah, so we are raising 70% of the time. I think that here, as I said, with the 664, I think that we can lead because we are going to lead very often. We do not flush draw. And with the fours, I think maybe we can bet 50-50. Checking 50 and betting 50. Apparently we are leading only 20% of the time. With a 6, yeah, I think with a 6, we are betting just 30% of the time. Yeah, probably this is due to the fact, and with the ace of hearts, I think we would lead just 30% of the time. Yeah, I think that, yeah, the problem here is that we are checking very often. I think it looks like we're checking more often on the 6-6-4 than we are checking on the 9-9-5, for example, because maybe we're not holding many sixes and we're holding a bit more nines. Yeah, but yeah, 18%. Yeah, just remember that 18% on the 6-6-4. 6-6-4, 18%. Let's see if our theory holds. What do we have here? A9, 10, with a jack, and we're blocking aces and kings, and jack. So yeah, we are turning our gut shot and backdoor flush draw into a bluff, because we cannot call with this hand. It's just too weak. We cannot check raise either. That would be a bit crazy. But we have a little something going on here. We are blocking a little bit, and we have a gut shot in case he has, I don't know, queens. And also what is important is that we are going to lead this pretty often, so that's why we're allowed to bluff sometimes. With the 10 jack, we are leading 82% of the time. 15% of the time. Yeah, like twice. And probably without a queen, a bit more, because we may be up against queens or something. Okay, jack 6 deuce. I think that we should check. Maybe we should bet this 15% of the time. Because of that, I think that we are going to no, I think we can bet, because he doesn't have many jacks here, so I think that we're checking with a medium made hand and a medium draw. Let me see. Yeah, if we have this queen 3, 7, 3, now we would start betting a bit more. So yeah, so we are checking so often that we cannot lead this very often. That's the point. Queen 7, 7. Yeah, okay, so To 664 we were betting 18%. So here I guess we're going to lead like 20% of the time. And this is a good candidate because we're holding the 7 of hearts, which blocks a little bit. And we have a weak straight draw, so I would just bet here. Like, I don't know, 60 or 70% of the time. So yeah, we are leading 23% of the time, and with our hand we are leading 67% of the time. 7-4 deuce. I think we're going to check this. Could check this every single time. If you want to simplify your strategy. Even with the nut flash, you're going to check very often. What happens if he bets? We probably call 1. We're just folding with such a bad 9. But yeah, so I think I'm a bit sticky on these situations. But with 1 heart, yeah, okay, with 1 heart we're racing always. With 2 hearts we're always racing. And with 3 we're starting to call. Yeah, okay. So yeah, check racing very aggressively. With the nuts and without the nuts. We have a small leading range of 20% of the time. Nah, I think I would just check call this. So we have a small leading range of 13%. As played, I would say that we want to check call. And here, well, I think this is a check call as well. Are we starting to fold sometimes? Nah. But pretty tricky situation. Probably by the river we start folding some, I would guess. Here we are going to check almost always, and I think we are going to check call here and try to catch a full house, or we could try to, well, actually we said that we were check raising almost always when we have the ace of spades, but here I think we're going to call and try to spot a queen, a 7 or a 6. No, fuck me, we are raising. Let's say he goes bananas and he raised, which he shouldn't. Are we raising with a set of queens or with eights? Yeah, I think we have to raise some. Let's see here if we have eights. Or are we calling always? What do we do with eights? Yeah, we are calling. We're calling with eights. We are racing sometimes with a nut flush. Because we want our opponent to have the 6 and the deuce. 6s or deuces. And we are racing with 2. So we're racing with 2 spades, but we are starting to call with 1. So we call with 1, we raise with 2. Okay, we raise with 2, we call with 1, with, yeah, okay, if we raise with 2, we raise with 2 spades, we hope that we are against kings, against the king of spades, king x of spades. When we are calling with 1, we are probably check raising the river, check raising the turn. Maybe, not sure, but 7-4 deuce. But yeah, interesting to know we are calling with sets and racing with the nut flush, either with or without it. What do we do here? No heart. I think it would be suicidal to bet, and I think that we are probably just are we check folding here? Racing. All right. That's amazing. We are check raising as a bluff here, which people do not normally do. Check raising folding without any kind of backup. What do we do here? Without the spades, I think we have to check, and we have to check this very often because we are often against the nut flush. 9 here. Well, if we have a leading range of, let's say, 30%, maybe we can bet this 50% of the time. Yeah, we have a leading range of 15%. Just 18%. I think 18%. Yeah, I was a bit off with the 30%. Here it's going to be like 15% also. 15%, so if we are, or let's say we're leading 20, maybe we are betting this 50 or 60%. That's leading 12%. Why so low? Yeah, maybe our opponent let me think. Yeah, maybe our maybe our opponent has more 5-6 than we even do. So, and here he's going to raise for sure. Three, 5, 5. Maybe we have a small leading range of 18%, but for 16%. But with this particular combo against a 50% bet, we're going to call. Call turn and call river and lose to aces probably. Here we probably have a small leading range of 10%, 10 to 15%. So I think we're going to check call this one. 10 to 15, no, it's even less than that, just 7%. And we are never raising here. I don't think so with this particular combo. Yeah, we're calling 90% of the time. 91% of the time. The fourth and jack. I think we have a small leading range here, maybe, I don't know, 10% of the time, 16% of the time. So because of this, if he bets now 75% of pot, I think we're going to call. Deuce 3-4. This is a board where we actually have like a leading range of 30% of the time. So with the nuts, maybe we can lead 60-70% of the time. We're just leading 20% of the time. This is pretty low. I think maybe with 3-4-5. Yeah, with 3-4-5 we're probably leading a bit more just because we are not up against ace-5 so often. I mean, we don't care if we are up against ace-5. Yeah. Anyway, we are still leading like 30% of the time. And I think that with this particular combo we are going to raise like 80 or 90% of the time. No, like 50% of the time. Raising more often without blockers. With blockers we are always calling. Here we have a small leading range of 25% of the time. We cannot call a bet, so we would just bet here. Yeah, no, I'm a bit off here. Yes, I'm sorry. The Deuce 3-7 is a board which impacts more our opponent's opening range than even our range, because he's going to have so much garbage there. Here, check, calling. Deuce 5-10, I think we have to check this like, I don't know, 90% of the time. Yeah, so that's why we want to check as well this particular combo pretty often. And here I think we're going to raise. Are we going to raise always here, or are we slow playing? Maybe we raise 50% of the time. No, we raise 100% of the time. Okay, we raise because we want to raise as well with some H3, 4, I would say. Yeah, so we raise because we want to raise with H3, 4 as well. Okay. Deuce 9 Queen, it's an we are blocking a bit the 10-jack combo, and we have a little bit of something going on with the hearts, but I think it's probably just a check here. Bad fuck. With 2 hearts, though. So yeah, it's a mixed strategy, half betting, half checking. So yeah, one gut shot and backdoor is just betting sometimes. What do we do here? Well, easy check. And here, since we're holding the king of spades, he doesn't have many 8s or 9s. I think no, we are raising because we think he may have 8s or 9s. Yeah. Three, 4, 6. If we have a small leading range of, let's say, 20% of the time, with this particular hand, I would bet because we're blocking the 5-7. Very often. King 4-4, we probably want to check this, I don't know, 90% of the time. Well, yeah, we want to check this 98% of the time, but this particular combo, we want to bet it like 50% of the time, just because we're blocking a little bit of force and we have two backdoors. But yeah, it's quite a bit difficult to pull this. 5-4 deuce, we're checking. Check raising with the nut flush or the nut flush blocker and calling with sets. Are we calling? I don't think so. Are we raising? So we are calling here. Yeah, it was a bit off here. So what do we do here? This is an easy check call, I would assume. With some backdoor straights and flush draws. Fold, fuck me, we're just folding queens on the flop. Why are we folding? Well, yeah, it's a 75% pot, and we are not blocking aces. Okay, here. If we are leading 20% of the time, with this particular combo, I would lead like 50 or 60% of the time. So we are leading 20% of the time. With this combo, we are leading like 75% of the time, because we have a gut shot. And well, yeah, that's it. With two backdoors, we are calling a bit more often. I mean, we're probably check calling this, or maybe check raising, I'm not sure. Here it's 100% check against an ace. And are we going to call? Look, I think so, yeah. Alright, deuce 3-7. Okay, as we've seen, those boards, they kind of impact more the button raising range, because apparently he's holding more those 4, 5, 6 kind of hands than we actually do. So for this reason, we have to check back this. So we are checking 92% of the times here. Here easy check back as well. We are almost never leading here, or never leading here. And we are check raising. No, we're calling this time. Why are we calling? We're calling because he doesn't have 7s or 6s. He doesn't have 7 or 6s. Yeah, that's why we're calling. What should we do with just an ace? Well, with the 6 of spades we're raising, so probably with the ace of spades we would raise as well. So pretty interesting. We are calling when he doesn't have a set. Here, what are we doing? Here, I think we have to check this 20% of the time. We have to donk 20% of the time here. So we can donk 20% of the time, but the problem, we are betting actually. My point is that although I knew that Kings is going to bet here some percentage of the time, I don't think he's going to go bananas betting just because if we bet, what is he going to call us with, right? So yeah, there are some very specific kings that we want to bet 66% of the time, but this is I mean, why are we betting this and we are not betting this? So I'm pretty sure this is because the accuracy of the solver, to be honest with you. Well, maybe there are some subtle points where you bet one hand and you don't bet the other hand. But the point, as you're not going to execute this strategy as perfectly as the solver does, I would recommend only leading here, 30% of the time, and that's it. Now what are we going to, well, I think we are going to pot because he may very well have 6, 8, 9. And still we're calling 1 in 3. I want to check something. Yeah. So here it's a check for bet. Well, yeah, it's very specific holding here. I mean, I would just check back all my hands there if I want to simplify my life there. Are we trying to bluff here? Yeah, we're trying. So yeah, there are very specific holdings where you wanna bluff. But very, very specific holdings without spades, which are going to be the 8-6-6 or 3-3, 8-8 kind of hand. Well, this is a check fold, I would imagine. Then with two backdoors, just to connect it here. I think that our hand has 3 hearts, so it's a bit harder for us to make our flush, but it's good in the sense that we are blocking the continuation range of our opponent. So I think for this reason we are going to bet here. Yeah, although we are checking this pretty often with our particular hand, we want to lead. The question remains, what do we do if they raised us? I think that think we have to bot here. Brown call. But yeah, we are not folding. Check, 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 check. We're checking always here. Check, 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 check. Fold, I think. Even with two backdoors. King, queen, queen is a board that we are going to check very often, like, I don't know, 90% of the time. This particular combo we are betting, but very hard to execute this. And here we are just check folding, if I remember correctly. No, we're calling because we're blocking the 8 and we have a 9. Although we're starting to fold some of the time, so. And we are raising some percentage of the time here. So folding some, calling some, and raising some. Here we are going to check. Are we going to call? Yeah, and probably bluff. No, we're just folding here. And we're calling with the ace of hearts. Ace 7, 7 and hearts, we are calling. We have to lead here 5% of the time, so here we can lead 5%, 5 to 10% of the time. So maybe we can lead here 10-15% of the time. I think this is going to play, well, 18%. This is going to play as a check call. I don't think we're going to check raise, just because if he raises us, then our hand is probably not good. So there is no reason to raise here. Here this is going to go just check, check. Ace ace queen. We have to check 100% here. Nine, 6, 6. We probably have a leading range of 20 to 25% of the time. And I think we can bet this 50% of the time. we are checking. We're not even betting with so often we do not flash. Yeah, I mean, I made a mistake. It's normally you cannot value that much to King of Hearts flash draw, so you're going to play this a bit more passively. Same as when you make your King high flash, you're going to play a bit more passively. Here, check, continue probably with our 7 and something going on here, but raise. We are turning our hand into a bluff right here. Folding, calling, and raising. Those hearts are a bit hard to spot. So yeah, when you have a 7, fold with a flash draw, we would call for sure. Well, we are raising sometimes, but yeah, when on those pair boards, when you're holding the higher pair, you want sometimes to raise. Fold some, call some, raise some. Difficult to execute though. 4, 5, 7, check folding. Okay, deuce 5, 10. With 1, 2. Well, we have to check 90% of our range here. With this particular combo, we are betting, but okay, 966. I think we're going to check. If he bets, I'm going to say, I mean that folding, but my point is that I want to see if I have something like 10, 9, jacks, 10, jack, 9, 5, 10, 9, jack, 5, even, 10, 10, 9, 5, I think. Yeah, that's my point. We are going to raise sometimes when we're holding a 9 as a bluff. Why? Well, because we want aces, kings, and queens to fold, and if they call us, we still have like 4 outs. And even more if we have backdoors. So we would have like 25% equity. If we had something like ace, king, queen, 9, now we are calling a bit more. But jack, 9, 4, whatever, we're raising a lot. And if we had 8894. Well, 8895. We are also raising. Yeah. Because our hand is going to block those 7-8 combos, which are going to continue. And since we're holding 8s, we're blocking a bit those 6, 7, 8, 9 combo that our opponent could have. And this is true if we had 7, 7, 9 Jack as well. We are raising here. So yeah, keep that in mind, that you need to. We have like King, Queen, Jack, 9. Are we calling? No, we are starting to fold actually. So yeah, with the King, Queen, Jack, 9, we are folding. But with a weaker hand such as 10, 10, 9, 5, for example, we are raising. That's because we are blocking a bit more the continuation range of our opponent. And if we get called, we're going to have a 9, like 4 pretty good outs. And maybe some backdoor flush draw. But with the King, Queen, Jack, 9, we only have 2 outs, which are going to be the 9s, in case he has aces. But if we make like second pair with a Queen on the turn, how happy are we about our hand? So yeah, this is pretty important, how to play those pair boards. Here, this has to be a check. And I would say check call. The King high flush is not that strong, and we do not hold on nuts. So Jack, Jack, 6. We're going to test our strategy again here. This is a board that we want to check like 80 to 90% of the time. Here our draw is not particularly good because it's only to the King high flush, and we have 3 hearts, so we are blocking a little bit. With the 10 we are blocking a little bit the jacks, so I think we're going to bet this one. And we are betting like 70% of the time. Yeah, turn. Yeah, I want to test my strategy. Check. Bet, okay. Not bad. Yeah, I wanted to test my strategy about what should we do with 10, 10, 8, 7, for example. Let's say he bets 50. Now, well, I'm going to fold here, but if I had the 10, 10, 7, 8. Yeah, well, it looks like we're calling because here it's a bit different than on the other spot, because our opponent is not going to have so many aces, kings, and queens as we had before. And also he's going to have more jacks on his range than on the other scenario where the preflop raiser is not going to hold as many 9s. If we had something like 10, 10 queen, Yeah, but now we're calling. Right, and then queen. Yeah, because the strength of our hand. Alright, so here, well, this is an easy check call, and I want to give us a flash on the turn. It's not a board where you can lead. Ah, fuck, I wanted to continue. Well, this is going to be our last hand, and I'm going to play this. We are checking 97% of the time, which is insane. So here he bets, and then we call. Ah, fuck. Well, let's try a king jack 6, something similar. We're checking 95%, now he bets, and we call. Ah, Jesus Christ. Alright. Under the gun versus big blind. Checking. Here he bets. Then we call. Well, let's save the button. We're checking 94% of the time, so pretty similar as before. And here we give us a flash. Now, when we're holding the ace 4, 5, 8, I think we're going to lead. I think we're going to check almost always. Well, yeah, like 20% of the time. Well, why is that? The reason is that our range is very weak. We are going to have some 10 queen kind of hands, some maybe king jack without anything, right? Like king jack no heart, something like that. Yeah, we could have this, right? King jacks without a flash draw, like king jack 7-7. And because of this, our range is going to be super weak. And because of that, we have to check this very often. Even with the nut flash. With the nut flash, we're going to bet only like 20% of the time. And with the blockers, we're going to bet 40% of the time. So yeah, this is the last hand that I wanted to show, is that when you make your flash on the turn, after having shown so much weakness, you have to check back on the turn. I mean, you've shown some strength, but you still have plenty of hands which are not great on the turn. So you have to check very often with the nut flash. And in fact, here we are checking 97% of our range. If on the contrary, we raise here. And he calls, and now we make our flush. I think right now we can bet maybe 50% of the time or something like that. Let's see. Yeah, now with the nut flush, we're only betting 56% of the time. Just because we sometimes are going to have the nut flush here, but I think we are going to pot with kings with the king of hearts, for example. Kings. Kings with, no, actually kings with the king of hearts. Kings with the seven of hearts we're potting sometimes. King with the seven of hearts. Yeah, kings with the king of hearts we're potting quite often, and we're checking some. Well, so we are going to have the nut flush, but we are going to have